Hello folks, how are you? We'll get started now if that's okay. So welcome to Dublin City University. On behalf of myself and Professor Mark Brown, the local hosts of the Eden Conference, we're delighted to welcome you here today to the 32nd Eden Conference and the largest conference to date. So delighted to see us all. We had a really nice start to the conference yesterday with the PhD Symposium and a really nice workshop hosted by Mel and Olaf and Baron on systematic reviews, so really good. A fantastic welcome reception. It was really nice to see everyone there, and congrats to the new Eden Fellows. So we might show your appreciation. So it's fantastic to be hosting the conference here at DCU Institute of Education, the home of education in DCU. We're really delighted to be the hosts. Me in particular, because Eden has played a really important role in my own professional development in the area of digital learning. I started off coming to the conference, going to the webinars, I joined the NAP, more recently got involved with the conference. So it's played a really important role in my development, and it's a really important community in Europe. We have a really action-packed program lined up for you today. The next 2 days, in fact. Some really interesting speakers. The Gasta, obviously. Whoop, is Tom here? Gasta Master hasn't arrived. He had too many pre-Gasta drinks last night in the Cat and Cage. I'm sure he'll be along in time for his session. We have a fishbowl tomorrow, which I'm really excited about as well. So thanks to the fishbowl victims for volunteering against their will. And lots of really excellent parallel sessions. We have 9 parallel sessions simultaneously at several times during the conference. So fingers and toes crossed that the IT is kind to us. But luckily we brought professionals over there in the corner. So hopefully all will be well. So I'm gonna kind of keep it relatively short before I introduce Professor Anne Looney. But remember, this is really your community, so get involved. Tweet. We love a bit of tweeting. Try out the giant hashtag. And we have some fabulous prizes for the best tweet. The booze that you see over here, fabulous prizes. Also, the most creative/interesting tweet. I don't have criteria for this. It'll just be the one I like most. So watch out for those fabulous prizes. We have a few spot prizes along the way as well. So now I'm going to introduce Professor Anne Looney, Executive Dean of DCU Institute of Education. Professor Looney is Dean of Ireland's largest faculty of education. From 2001 to 2016, she was CEO of the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment in Ireland, the agency responsible for curriculum and assessment at all years of education, primary, post-primary and early years in Ireland. Anne was also interim CEO of the Higher Education Authority. Her current research interests include assessment, policy, practice, curriculum, teacher identity, professional standards for teaching and learning, and she is also published on religious, moral, civic education, and education policy. So over to you, Anne.
Good morning, everybody. God, it's terrible to stand in front of a very old photograph of yourself. This is by far and away the best event I've opened in this theatre in a long time. 9:10, bottle of whiskey on the table, bottle of gin on the table. I'm thinking, yeah, this is my kind of place. As Orna has said, you're sitting here in our largest lecture theatre in the Dublin City University Institute of Education, and the president of the university, Professor Dara Keogh, has asked me to formally welcome you on behalf of the university to the Institute and the University for your deliberations this week. To welcome, as I already said, the largest group of Edeners, the largest group of Edeners ever to gather, and you couldn't really be gathering in a better place. You're also, we have 4,000 students of education who study on this campus. Unusually for Europe, education is a full faculty of the university here. And so we play a key role in the university alongside our engineers, scientists, business school, health and medical researchers across the university. And I think that interdisciplinarity is a really important part of what we do here. We also train a lot of teachers, early childhood educators. And for that reason, and also because of where we are in the world and in human progress, it's particularly timely that you are here for this conference at this time. We had last week, we had 1,000 children on the campus for 2 days presenting their science and technology projects using technology to solve global problems. It was focused on the sustainability goals, and each one of them presented everything from how you could use the energy generated in the playground to power the water fountains. That was one of the winners. I thought that was pretty cool. Right up to looking at the energy use in the zoos and local parks. But I do want to say, I do want to signal that as they were here, they also rampaged through the campus. So sit gently on the furniture. Be very careful when you open a door. When you go to plug something in, don't assume it will always work. They did have a lot of fun on the campus, and I haven't quite counted the cost of that. So in welcoming people from, I think, 126 countries, in welcoming, I do say, please be gentle on the equipment, because it actually has taken quite a hit in the last few days. I'm sure Mark will tell you a little bit more about that as well. Orna mentioned that that it was appropriate to welcome you to the Institute of Education, but also I do want to welcome Orna and Mark to the Institute of Education, because Orna is now an associate professor with us in the School of Policy and Practice, having moved, if you like, from the, shall I say, the third space, right, into the faculty. And from the university perspective, that's an extremely important move for us. It's a very important move for the faculty. It's a recognition that the kind of work that Orna has been doing over the period of her career really, is now, if you like, I don't want to say mainstreamed, because you can never mainstream Orna really, but however, is now integral to thinking about the enterprise of education in its fullest sense, and that preparing an early child educator to work with our youngest citizens without giving that early child educator an opportunity to not just use the technology, that's the easy bit, not just make the most of technology, but to think about that child in a world of ubiquitous technology, and to think about that child as a citizen in a world shaped by technology. We need Orna's thinking and the thinking of Mark in that context. Mark is following in Orna's footsteps, and Mark will also is in the process of joining the School of Policy and Practice as a professor in the Institute of Education. We're delighted to bring Mark also into the Institute, and to bring the National Institute for Digital Learning to the Institute of Education. And watch this space, because it will transition into a national observatory for digital education, the NODE. And what we hope to do is to have that interdisciplinary view on digital education from all the schools in the Institute. That's the School of Policy and Practice, language literacy in early childhood, science, human development. So the philosophers, the engineers, the technologists will all be thinking about and reflecting on the digital in education, and I think that change is really important. So I'm also delighted to have two really good colleagues, active academics and leaders in the field, bringing that into the Institute of Education. Those of you who are local to Ireland and local to the north side of Dublin will know that on Saturday there was a very big funeral on the north side of Dublin, and that was for a musician called Christy Dignam, who was a singer in a band called Aslan. They actually never achieved world domination, but in the city of Dublin, this singer was the voice of the city. Lots of people outside Ireland think that Bono is the voice of Dublin City. Actually, within the city, this man, Christy Dignam, was the voice of Dublin. On Saturday, a music producer called Philip King was speaking on the radio about him. And he said the thing about Christy was the difference between listening to Christy and being in a room with Christy. He said when you listened to Christy's music, when you heard the representation of what he was trying to do, it was beautiful. But when you were in the room with Christy and sharing in his live performances and the way he connected with audiences, he said it was beyond beautiful. He said it was moving and you were caught up in it. I was sitting at my kitchen table. I'm one of those academics who writes with the radio on, and so one ear is on the radio, another ear is somewhere probably listening to the family, and my eyes were on the book. But I thought about that, and I thought about this conference and that piece about the human dimension. And for a very long time, I think, within my own reading around the digital in education and working on the school curriculum in particular, focused on schooling, but then having moved to higher ed and led an institute through the pandemic, we have been focusing a lot, and looking at your Eden conferences similarly, on the incredible potential of the digital in education, using it well, using the tools, making the most of it, looking at what it can give. And I don't doubt that during the pandemic, entire populations of digital skeptics moved into a role of digital evangelists. I had never taught online in my life before COVID came. And now I can confidently navigate the space and create my lessons and create all my recordings and set them all up. And the student feedback is reasonably positive. I have a bit to go yet. So I'm a late conduct particularly to online learning. But I think we all learned and have spent time looking at the potential of digital in education. I think that now, as Philip King says, we find ourselves on the point of considering the human. And we find ourselves on the point of considering, having done all of that work to learn about the importance and the role of the digital in education, our attention is now being turned to the human in that Venn diagram between technology and the human and the learning in the middle. Our attention is being driven to the human by developments in artificial intelligence. But other questions, particularly, and I was reading at the weekend about the role of the universities in contemporary society when that radio was on. But particularly in the time when we across the world face the rise of extremism in all its forms, whether that's extreme nationalism, whether that's extreme fundamentalism, whether that is extreme of anything. Particularly in Europe, we see a real fragility now in the European project, not just driven by war, but driven by people's responses to the mass mobilization of people, to movements around the world. We find ourselves in a world and in a human community that is being pushed towards the edges. And part of that push towards the edges is through the use of technology. I was reading John Douglas. It's one of the scariest books you'll ever read about neo-nationalism and the universities. But he talked about social media. And he said through social media, various communities form global connections. That's a really positive thing. I think that's a positive dimension of technology. And they create an immense impact in the virtual realm, even if a group merely represents a moderately sized circle in the real world, known as the illusionary giant principle. So a tiny group of people can have a massive impact now using technology. They can create the illusion of a mass movement, even in the real world if it is a tiny group of people. And collectively, these groups polemicized deviating opinions in other communities with an intensity that borders on hate and aggression. So you Philip King on Saturday morning saying Christy Dignam made that human connection. It was different from the virtual representation. I was reading John Douglas, talking about how humans can use technology to create an illusion of a mass movement. We live in interesting times, and this conference finds itself in that space. Charles Taylor talks about the social imaginary, how things are. There's no doubt about it that as lay people begin to interact with and understand, or perhaps not understand, but at least get access to tools underpinned by artificial technology in a way they didn't have before, artificial intelligence in a way they didn't have before. The kinds of questions that you are addressing today and over the next few days become increasingly important. Now, I've all talked you into a very serious space, so back to the booze. This is also a conference that is about gathering, and after the pandemic, it is great to have everybody face-to-face and spend time gathering. We hope you also enjoy Dublin. The other thing we celebrated on this campus last Friday was Bloomsday. So there was plenty of alcohol drunk in that case as well. So I wish you all the best in your deliberations. Orna, Mark, I want to welcome you formally to the Institute of Education among your own community of scholars. We look forward to working with you into the future. And we look forward to ongoing connections between DCU, its Institute of Education, and Eden. There is serious work to be done now, serious questions and important things to think about, and I look forward to engaging with you in the next few days. Fáilte Róibh go léir, and you're very welcome. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Anne. Next up, we have President of Eden, Professor Josep Duarte. Hopefully the slides will change. John? Or not? Always good to have we'll just have Anne for another bit, yeah. Okay, while he's sorting that out, just imagine that Joseph's face is on that slide, and I'll read his bio. So Professor Josep Duarte is President of Eden Digital Learning Europe. He is a professor in educational sciences and technology at the Open University of Catalonia, UOC. He is editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Educational Technology and Higher Education, otherwise known as ETHE, an amazing journal, if I say so myself. It's a Q1 open access journal published by Springer and co-edited by UOC, DCU, and Universidad de los Andes. So, Josep, welcome.
Thank you very much, Orna. And good morning to everyone. And thank you all to joining us here today at the beginning of this Eden Digital Learning Europe Annual Conference 2023. I'm so delighted to meet you and see you here in person, finally, in this opening session today. With this conference, we are recovering the tradition of the previous Eden conferences before COVID as a place to share and to discuss digital education research projects and proposals and everything related to this topic. Yes, we can. Digital education for better futures. This is the focus of the Eden 23 Annual Conference, and we are here to explore and to be part of the future of digital education. We must dream big and make possible these better futures for digital education with our research teaching activities in our educational institutions and educational leadership. Eden is an excellent platform to create digital education futures, and Eden is a strong community of academics, professionals, and institutions with over 30 years of experience. I would like to share with you some facts of this Eden conference that we are starting today. We have here 324 participants coming from 33 countries. We have participants from European countries, of course, and faraway countries like Canada, the US, Australia, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Mexico, Costa Rica, and New Zealand. We are so proud to have representation from 164 countries, 164 educational institutions. We receive 200 submissions distributed in 64 full papers, 79 concise papers, 13 posters, 17 guest presentations, 17 synopses for the PhD Symposium yesterday, and 10 action labs. And tonight, we will have the gala dinner, and during the gala dinner, one of these full papers will receive the Eden Best Research Paper Award, which is a tradition of Eden. And this Best Research Paper Award is decided by independent jury of researchers of digital education field and led by the UNESCO Chair in Education and Technology for Social Change. I'd like to remember also that Eden have an open source journal called the European Journal of Open Distance and E-Learning. And this journal, of course, is open to receive your submissions after this conference. And also we have in this conference 3 excellent keynotes and 5 spotlight speakers distributed in 3 plenary sessions. This is a fantastic program to work together, dream big together, and say, yes, we can. We can build these digital education futures. And now let me share with you some few achievements of Eden during this last month. I would like to share first that Eden have been working hard since November last year in order to define our new strategic plan for the next 5 years. And we have several meetings, full-day meetings in different cities, in Berlin, in Barcelona, all of the management board members, and also with the Fellows Council and the NAP department inside of Eden. And we agree also to share this information with all of our members. And finally, we agree in this new strategic plan with a new mission for Eden, which is, as you can see here on the screen, the Europe's leading network for advancing digital education. And also we have a new vision, which is to advance digital education in Europe at all levels by serving the needs of our individual and institutional members, which is one of the most important things for us, through providing a multi-stakeholder network for collaboration, discussion, and professional learning, acting as a knowledge-building community for creating, sharing, research-informed best practices and learning innovation, and advocating, of course, for open, inclusive, and sustainable policies and solutions for regional, national, European, and international levels. And to do that, we work in 5 priorities. The first one is about who we are, and that means that we would like to, one of our priorities is growing and sustaining our membership. This is very important for us. What we do, we would like to strengthen knowledge-building events like this and different activities that we are organizing during all year. How we work, enhancing organizational efficiency. For us, it's very important, the things that we work internally, in particular with our secretariat. What we say, that means improving communication and dissemination in order to let all of you know the activities that we are developing, and finally, how we can influence playing an active role in shaping digital education policy and practice. As a community, of course, we must align our efforts with these priorities to drive our mission and create a meaningful impact in the digital education landscape. And we are implementing an annual strategic action plan to achieve these priorities. As I said, we want to continue building this, the Eden community. This is our main goal because we believe that the Eden community, of course, is the most important asset that we have. And please be aware of the new coming Eden proposals and activities to facilitate contact among all of our members to share knowledge and to create these better digital education futures. And now let me share the 2 new activities that we are, not 3, only, yes, new activities that we are preparing, we are working now at this moment. One is we feel very proud our participation in this, in the construction and to build this European Digital Education Hub with the European Commission. We are members of the consortium that we are preparing this European Digital Education Hub that was launched last year in June, during also the Eden conference in Tallinn. And now we are working hard in the preparation of different knowledge building activities, one every month, and also participating in the mentoring process, which is one of the activities of this European Digital Education Lab. I would like to invite all of you, if you are not registered yet in this hub, to register, to be member of the hub, and also to be an active participant of the different activities that the hub is organizing. And now I would like to introduce a new Eden activity for this year, which is the Digital Education Leadership Academy. This is a high-level professional development event for higher education leaders to develop their skills in supporting digital transformation. The Digital Education Leadership Academy aims to provide a highly engaging professional development environment for leaders in different education sectors. A team of leading European digital education experts and institutions will support this Leadership Academy. The program will involve learning experience ranging from spotlight talks on key issues, future-focused case studies from different universities in Europe, hand-on workshops, and wicked problems addressing the real-world challenges that face today's educational leaders. The Digital Education Leadership Academy will be in Barcelona from November 29th to December 1st and hosted by the Open University of Catalonia. And of course, I invite to all of you to disseminate this new event, this new Eden event, and also to consider participating. And finally, just to finish this, I would like to acknowledge, on behalf of Eden, the warm hospitality and support received from Dublin City University, and in particular, the professional work made by Mark Brown and Orna. Thank you very much, and a big applause for them. And I would like also to say thank you to all my colleagues from Eden Management Board for their continued support, and of course to the Eden Secretariat, led by Elena Trepoulet, because the work it's essential not for the preparation and the success of this conference. And I would like also to thank to our sponsors. The gold one is the Dublin City University, and in particular its National Institute for Digital Learning. Also the silver sponsors, the BBOX, the Big Field Education Labs, and the Catalyst. And of course, I cannot finish without expressing my gratitude to all Eden community, individual and institutional members, for their engagement, professionalism, and integrity, and for supporting this unique European organization for over 30 years. Thank you very much, and enjoy this Eden Annual Conference 2023. Yes, and now the first spotlight that we have in this opening ceremony is from Anushka Ferrari. Anushka Ferrari is the policy officer at the European Commission in Brussels of the Directorate General for Education and Culture. Formerly, she was in European Commission also Directorate General of Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, working on the validation of non-formal and informal learning and micro-credentials. And she is also a project manager, or she was also a project manager at the European SchoolNet and a researcher of a European Commission Joint Research Center. Anushka Ferrari is interested in digital education policies on education and training in Europe, lifelong learning, digital competences, skills, development, entrepreneurial learning, employability, innovation in education, and research for policymaking. She is a good friend of Eden and participated in several Eden conferences and activities. She was also in the preview conference in Tallinn, but she's not able to be here today with us. And she prepared a video, and we can have the opportunity to see him here, to hear her here in the video.
Hello everyone, my name is Anushka Ferrari and I work at DG Education and Culture in the European Commission. I'm very sorry I will not be able to be here with you today, but I'm very happy that I was nevertheless given the opportunity of sharing my thoughts and remarks with a video. So today I'm going to talk to you about our vision for digital education for the future and about our ambition. And this is summarized in the Digital Education Action Plan that we adopted in September 2020. In this communication, we come out with a series of actions on digital education that we started implementing in January 2021. I would like to share two specific concepts that are very dear to us in our vision. One is inclusion and the other is high quality. They're very intertwined. So we cannot have an inclusive digital education and training if it's not of high quality. And we cannot have high quality in digital education if it's not for all. So if you want, these are the two pillars of our plan, which is divided into two strategic priorities. One is supporting member states and institutions in the digital transformation of the ecosystem, so supporting them to become more confident in the use of technologies for teaching and learning. And the second one is about the development of digital skills. So what I'm going to talk to you about is first the structured dialogue that we had with the member states, and then two proposals for council recommendations. The structured dialogue with the member states is the first action that we have in the action plan. And this is something we did throughout 2022. The idea there is a very simple one, if you want. So it's the idea to have deep dive conversations with the member states on what they are doing and what they plan to do on digital education and skills. And just a small point, when I talk about digital education, I talk about digital education and training. Now, this idea was slightly twisted in a fundamental way, in my opinion. So basically, these conversations had to happen in a whole of government approach. When we talk about digital education and skills, we cannot just talk to ministries of education, but also to ministries of research, of infrastructure, of finance, of labor, of social affairs. And that's what we did. So in every conversation we had with the member state, we came with a whole of institutional approach, so with different DGs, and the member state came with the different parts of their government. So in a way, we found the way, if you want, to go deeper into the different facets of digital education. And this dialogue that happened with every single member state, and was supported also at very high level to the high level group, led us to have a deeper understanding of the main issues, challenges, but also opportunities and engagement that the member states are having, to giving more impulse in that. And it also fed two proposals for council recommendation that we adopted in April. These two proposals are two different facets of digital education and skills. So one is looking into the what we call the enabling factors for digital education. So what are the building blocks that need to be there in order for every institution to make the most of digital education? And the other one looks into the development of digital skills. So if you want, they are like the political part of the two aspects of the action plan that I was mentioning before. So when we come with the council recommendation, this is a soft instrument that is now negotiated with the member states, and we plan to have an adoption of these two recommendations by the end of the year. So now we are in the moment of the negotiation with the member states, so we are having a dialogue with them. So let me just tell you what we proposed in our two proposals. So in the first one, what we want to do is to overcome the digital divide. And we would like to do so and have so in a very specific way. So what we are proposing to member states is, for instance, to look into the connectivity, to look into the way they are monitoring their national strategies and policies, and also to look into a way of making smart investments. So this is one of the aspects. We also look into the governance model, so keeping again this whole of government approach, and indeed we look into capacity building. So how teachers, leaders, but also organization can build capacity for having a purposeful digital transformation. In the second one, in the one on the provision of digital skills, we start from the understanding that we would like every citizen to be able to develop their digital skills in a lifelong learning perspective. So from when they are children up to when they are adults. And in this way, we tackle the provision, so the courses and the way in which everyone can learn and develop their digital skills. So just a couple of big tickets there. So what we would like member states to reflect upon is starting early, not because we think that young children should be in front of screens more than they are, but because they do. They are already in front of screens when they are a few months old without having the skills that are needed for this. And we would like education and care institutions to support parents and families, raising awareness of the opportunities, but also on the risks that there are with this use. Then the second point that we're pushing forward is for member states to have a coherent approach to the provision. So not just look into one sector, but having a strategy that takes into account every single person. And then the third point I would like to mention is the need for all sectors of education, so primary, secondary, university, vocational education and training, adult education and so on, to have both an offer that goes into transversal digital skills, so teaching digital skills for all kind of activities, and also specialized, like for ICT professions. Just give you the example of universities. So in a university, until very recently, you could only develop your digital skills if you're studying computer science, for instance. Whereas what we are seeing is that many universities are now starting to propose courses or modules on digital skills regardless of the main area of study of the student. So with this, what we would like to do is to really push for more commitment from the member state, but also for education and training institutions and organizations. So this is a bit, in a way, the state of art of what we're doing at the moment. And I will be available if you have questions, unfortunately not directly, but you can join me at, or you can reach out to me at anuska.ferrari@ac.europa.eu. I hope we are going to have a very fruitful conversation, and thank you for the time you took in listening. Bye.
So folks, just a quick poll, audience participation and all that. And also a nice plug for Vivox who are outside. So what word encapsulate your conception of what a better future for education looks like? So you can put your answers in there and we'll have a look later on. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of inspiring hope quotes. That's what we're hoping for. You could quote like Barack Obama, although Mark tells me, there's previous history to the hope thing. So pop your answers in there and we'll present them to the group later on. Over to Josep now. Technical issue. Okay, I'll fix it.
Technical issue. Okay, and now is the moment to introduce our first keynote speaker. It's a pleasure to me to introduce you, the Rikke of Norgard. Rikke is an associate professor at the School of Education in Aarhus University in Denmark. She is the coordinator of the Master in ICT-based Educational Design. She's a member of the Academic Council, Arts, and Steering Committee group member at the Center for Higher Education Futures at her university. She is also a board member of the Philosophy and Theory of Higher Education Society, and is participating and leading projects on the future of higher education with a focus on the humanities, as well as emerging technological fields and their impact on teaching and learning across the educational sector. Rikke, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I will have my speaker notes here, so I try to keep track of time. Otherwise, I'll get lost in my own thinking, probably. And I'll also just check that the slide thing works beautifully. Well, thank you so much. And good morning, everyone. And so happy to be here at, or is it in Eden? We'll figure that out together, I think. So this talk on between the real and the ideal, human futures in digital education, is kind of highlighting digital education, online education, educational technology, but it will be kind of a post-digital talk because it's a talk about thinking and practicing digital education for or in the future without it necessarily being on technology or on the digital. It's kind of there all the time. So where the digital online is now deeply entangled with our lives. So like we don't necessarily think about teaching and learning and have big conferences on whiteboards or on the positioning of chairs or the use of chairs or the setup of rooms. Well, they probably have in architecture. This is really, everything is about digital education, but without necessarily being about technology all the time. So it's thinking through digital technology, digital education, online education, hybrid education, which are my fields, and how they can be, and how they can help bring about better futures. So better futures, for that, one of the points of this talk is we need to look elsewhere, we need to think otherwise, and we probably also need to do differently. So the core question at heart of this presentation is also thinking about why do we have education? What are the values of education? What does better futures actually mean? So it's not kind of empty hype words that often kind of gets thrown around. So how do we actually take those questions seriously? And so I'll do my best to make this theme of the conference as complicated and demanding as it really is, while also giving some concept, methods, and principles to imagine and think through and speculate about to try to keep that complexity at heart of the question, while thinking about why and how we might achieve better futures in both possible and real ways. However, also importantly, the super headline of the Eden conference is "Yes, we can," which obviously speaks to the hope punk thinker and practitioner in me, but it also speaks to me in a more kind of professional level. So this book cover is from a book written by my mother in 1982. It is me there under the tree, pointing at the tractor, and it's about growing up on a farm, my father's farm. And they were quite young, buying the farm, and they were always getting told by friends and family, "Do you think you have what it takes? Can you manage this? Can you survive?" And so they, for a long time, calling the farm Mundegården, or the "Do we think we can make it farm?" But that was not the right name for building a new future, so they ended up calling it the "Yes we can farm," Ja vi kan gården. And the book Rikke on the Yes We Can farm is very much about me growing up on the Yes We Can farm and how we together as a family started to build a future together on this Yes We Can farm. And perhaps that's a nice opening of thinking about Eden and Yes We Can, how to build a farm together or a community together that are really believing in making a change. Okay, almost enough about me. I'm not only a farm daughter, a pig farmer's daughter, I'm also a teacher practicing digital education. I'm a designer developing digital education and a researcher writing on digital education, both in very practical and very philosophical ways. So I'm this hope punk, utopian thinker doing applied philosophy in practice and projects to try and showcase and really materialize the ideal in the real, and to design for wider and wilder futures for ourselves, our institutions, and our practices within them. And this is also what we are going to think about today. And I'm just trying to multitask slides here. Sorry, I'll move it over here. So, importantly, before we kind of dive into this, I'm not really coming here with any truths for you about how to do this, but I'm rather trying to think through something with you here. What is better futures in digital education? And with a focus on how to aim for more hope-punk futures in digital education and design for making the real materialize, or make the ideal materialize in the real. So, in my own writings, as well as in this talk, I'll try to address the overall theme of the Eden Conference on digital education for better futures. Something sorely needed, I think, when we consider the current ruined and ruinous educational landscape we find ourselves in, at least if you speak to the philosophers of education. And especially when it comes to policy and practice of our institution and practices within it, be it research, teaching, development, or otherwise, where words such as accountability, efficiency, managerialism, excellence, rankings, employability, usability, student satisfaction, and accreditation rules our institutions, pedagogies, and practices, which is, of course, also important, but it doesn't necessarily bring about better futures or do not necessarily honor the value and purpose of education. So this should really be the heart when we think about this and argue for it. And it's not something new. In 1996, Bill Reddings wrote the book, The University in Ruins, and called for what could be, perhaps from my point of view, considered hope-punk imagination in grimdark times. And he concluded the book by asking us to reimagine, revitalize, and re-evolutionize our ruinous institutions without recourse to romantic nostalgia. So we shouldn't go back to the ivory tower. We should go forward and try to figure out what is on the other side of this ruinous landscape we find ourselves in. He didn't bring about much methods or practical advice. It was more kind of a cry out towards other people to take up this challenge and to be hope-punk and daring to dream of better futures and preferable worlds. But importantly, as he highlighted, while staying true to and upholding the underlying purpose of education. So this is really the question we need to interrogate our practices with. Is this bringing about better futures? Is this honoring the purpose of education, what we are doing here in the online digital world? Otherwise, we should probably not do it. So Bill Redding's description of our ruined and ruinous institution is probably even more real and true today than it was in 1996. Today, our institutions are not only looking at the ruins of a proud past that will never return, but also called upon to subject to, operate within, anticipate, and be governed by a future that is felt as inevitable and uncompromising in our current presence. The future is already here. It is handed to us. It's already decided. We know what will happen in education. So the future, as known, only gives us two options: to stand like a deer in the headlights and get run over by it, or adapt and discipline ourselves to survive in a future that is already known and given to us, and just deliver what is expected because we know what will happen and what will come. This can even be observed in our most kind of optimistic and utopian practices within education. So the re-emergence and assimilation of utopia as a concept and as a practice in the form of what has been known as utopian realism in education. So here, even within utopian realism in education, we are also disciplined by the future, and we are also disciplining futures. And so looking across the literature on utopian realism in education, we see that there's a agreement on that visions should be grounded in the real world. They should be realistic. And even real utopias, as Wright writes about, needs to be compatible with well-functioning market institutions. And vision of anything outside these kind of narrow, realistic futures are dismissed as naive utopianism, as fantasies lacking a grip on reality. So this attempt within education to get real results in, as Panich and Gindin says, utopian realism as feasible, as realistic, but as anything but utopian. So by trying to discipline the future and domesticate utopianism or hope or better futures, we really have redefined utopia way, resulting in the domestication of utopia. So we don't want to go there. So where can we go then? Well, we can go back, because where we once saw in the past visions pointing beyond the present order being derided as utopian, and we now in the present see proposals that can be realized within the established order as being heralded as utopian, as hope punk, as bringing about better future. So really points towards where do we go from here if what we are witnessing is the domestication and recuperation of utopia fit for domestic life within education and within the established order, not really changing anything. All in all, utopian realism, if we have to put it a bit, provocative and bluntly, we could say, bring about tame, lame, and profane futures. So to think about these tame, lame, and profane futures, Damien Lutz and Voros and others within foresight studies, future studies, speculative design, have this futures cone to kind of show us that the future is wider and wilder than we might think. But these current anticipatory regimes that dominate our thinking now, in the present, and practices when it comes to possible futures as being and needing to be realistic on the one hand, and these domestication regimes that keeps the imagination in check and realistic and tame when it comes to imagining other possibilities. We need to kind of break free from these in one way or another. Because right now, the future is leading us and our institutions into grimdark education in the form of these tame, lame, and profane futures. As we were told, the future is already here, whether it be projected singular future up here, where we know exactly what will happen, the future in the singular form, or futures we are told are the only possible ones, the probable future, what will probably happen, and we need to kind of adopt and try to do something about it in the present, or even the plausible futures up there, where this is likely to happen. These are also the realistic ones. So these are only the realistic ones when we think about, listen to how others react to our futures we propose. As soon as it's not realistic, they're kind of dismissed. On the other hand, we don't need to, as we see from the futures cone, we don't need to stay scared deers in the headlight and subject ourselves to the anticipatory regimes currently dominating education. Or we don't need to domesticate our imagination and make it tame and lame in order for us to be reasonable and realistic when it comes to possible and more preferable futures in education. The future is actually not already here. It's not yet made, but it's also something we have a hand in making, which is a huge ethical responsibility to the purpose of education, its values, its worth, to the humans that are subjected to education and how that feels. So there are other possibilities, there are ways of thinking otherwise, of doing otherwise, of thinking about the future in other terms. And the first step in this is to understand that the future is often more open than we think, to both good and bad, and this also goes for the future of digital education. But to bring about a kind of rewildering and rewidening of future education and education frameworks requires in itself also wider frameworks for imagining and materializing possible, but utopian, future institutions, systems, formats, practices, and technologies. And are we wild and wide when we think about this? So again, returning to the futures cone here, you can see that the futures expand beyond the plausible here in the cone. There are worlds of possible futures beyond the projected, probable, and plausible futures, the realistic ones. And Voros' futures cone here is actually developed within industry, technology industry, industries trying to create future products. So it's the most tame and lame domain that this is invented within. So if they can kind of manage to think about other futures, we should really be able to do this within education and within digital education. And so in the beginning years of this futures cone, it stopped with the possible futures because that's all possible futures, and then there are kind of wildcard scenarios without this that are really, really fantastic and probably disconnected from reality altogether. But when Rose kind of used it in different situations and asked people to come up with all possible futures to think a bit wider and wilder, they were actually quite tame and lame. So when we think we are wild, we are still very, very tame in our thinking. So he added the dimension of preposterous futures. When we try to be really, really preposterous, we are actually still quite very much within the domain of the possible. So that's what we should stretch for in different ways, which is great news when it comes to rewildering and rewidening futures in digital education, because real utopias are very much a possibility. There are these wide, wild, and utopian futures that are possible for us for rewildering and rewidening our institutions, our practices, and our imagination and our systems when we think about what futures in education might be. These are equally, as foresight and future studies say, reasonable and responsible. They are not governed by the predicted, probable, or plausible futures that are kind of standing in the present and then forecasting what will happen in the future and then just building the tracks to get to that future that is forecasted. In these futures, you jump to the future that you really, really dream about for education, or that other people dream about, because we are often in education in the service of others, of other humans, and then jump to that future, look back at the present, and then see what are the decisions that needs to be made, what are the steps that needs to be taken to get to that future. So it's jumping freely rather than building some tracks. But to achieve this in our current educational landscape is something that requires another kind of thinking, a hope punk, a state of mind perhaps, and another kind of practice, perhaps utopia as method. According to Adja Romano, who kind of introduced the concept of hope punk signifies an insistence on hope, humanities, virtuousness, and possible futures, not as a purely naive, optimist, or utopian state, but as an active political choice made with full self-awareness that things might be bleak or even frankly hopeless, but you're going to keep hoping, loving, and being kind nonetheless. So hope punk signals a genuinely and sincerely activist spirit of fighting for something worth fighting for and demanding more virtuous, kind-hearted, and desirable futures. Also in digital education. So hope punk here is actually the opposite of accepting the inevitable future. It signals this anti-nostalgic, forward-looking stance against the grimdark and encroaching future in the singular, exactly what Bill Reddings called for. So through adopting this hope punk attitude, we are no longer enslaved or immobilized in the ruin, or as a deer in the headlights, of what was, what is, and what will come. Rather, we become more freely, but the questions also become harder. When hope punk education aims to instill in us a sense of activist hope that is genuinely ethical when we think about the hearts, the heads, the hands, and the habits of the humans we put into education and that are subjected to our systems, to our institutions, to our technologies. How do they feel? How do they think? How do they be and become humans within these systems? So if we have hope punk as an activist state of mind and utopia as an actual realistic method, how can we then begin to think about designing for the ideal in the real and to bring about real utopias rather than utopian realism in digital education? Sorry, that slide. So here we have some thinking, biofuel you could call it, that I'm right now having my futures fuel tank at the moment to try to think about for myself and with others about how to think and tinker with educational policies, systems, technology, practices, and futures, while not violating the virtues, values, and purpose of education, and without really trying to bring forward genuinely better human futures, more human futures. For this, again, we need to rebuild a more wide, wild, and hope-punk possibility space in digital education. And for this, again, we need new vocabularies and concepts, new methods and frameworks, new theories and approaches. It's also something I've tried here and there to take upon myself in my own work, both when I do philosophy on the ground and when I do practice in the cloud of digital education, trying to think through what it might mean and requires of me, of us, of projects, of institutions to envision new futures in higher education practices and practice hope-punk education and design for these futures, as well as in actual projects like the EU project we just started, try to actually experiment with it in concrete projects to bring about these hope-punk futures in actual practices and within actual institutions. And it's really, really annoying, it's really, really hard, and it's really, really complicated. Why should we do this? I don't know. So again, jumping to something a bit even more concrete, perhaps the domain of speculative design, which I'm really inspired by because it brings something fresh to thinking about technology, digital design, future institution. And in this book, which has a wonderful subtitle, Speculative Everything, Design, Fiction, and Social Dreaming. I think we should have more social dreaming in digital education as well. They talk about how we rapidly move toward a monoculture that makes imagining genuine alternatives almost impossible. And they say we need to experiment with ways of developing new and distinctive worldviews that include different beliefs, different values, ideals, hopes, and fears from today's. Because, as they say, if our belief system and ideas don't change, then reality won't change either. And then the most important part of the book, and what they stress again and again, they say we are not talking about a space for experimenting with how things are, making them better or different, but about other possibilities altogether. We are more interested in designing for how things could be with unreality. So trying to take that seriously. This is, and following this line, this is probably one of the most important books within design, Nielsen and Stolterman's The Design Way, Creating Intentional Change in an Unpredictable World. Wonderful subtitle as well. And here in this book, they position design, and education is also design, position design at its core as the intention and aspiration to materialize the ideal in the real. They say we get into real trouble because we focus on that which is, description and explanations of the current thing, the reality, rather than that which ought to be, the ethics and morality of the future we want, and without consideration for that which is desired, the dreams, what we hope for, our aspirations. So, to design well, or to do education well, or to do digital education well, requires a focus on desiderata. And so desiderata, they say, is something roused out of a desire, a hope, a wish, a passion, an aspiration, an ambition, a quest, a call to, a hunger for, or a will towards. So one question is, are those the questions that drives our choices, our actions, our implementations of digital education, our practices of them when we think about them? Is that what we evaluate our things on, our practices on, education on? The problem is in our culture, desires are often treated as low-level needs, things that we wish for, but that we could live without. But that's quite the opposite way around. We cannot live without our dreams, our hopes, feeling human in our hearts. And so this should really be how we evaluate digital education. So again, trying to be even more real, and coming to a conclusion here in a couple of slides, and pulling all of this complicated, annoying stuff together to offer some, a bit more, not real, but a bit more concrete principle or guidelines of how to materialize real utopias in digital education and practice hope-punk digital education. Let's see what we can do. We can start. We might not finish. I don't think we will finish today. So one thing of pulling all of this together and trying to think across all this kind of fluffy thinking is to really focus on rather moving away in digital education from responding to needs and towards fulfilling dreams. And of course that sounds really, really whimsical, naive, but again, as we are told by future studies, foresight studies, design, utopian studies, and so on, and at the core of the purpose of education, this is really what we should do, and this is what we should evaluate and interrogate ourselves and our domain on. Also, we should avoid inventing needs, as Nielsen and Stonderman calls it, that is designed for that which is, but not desired. Also, students are cheating with ChatGPT. We have a need here to fix this in a certain way so they don't cheat. Let's invent a system that will check them. That's perhaps that's very much a design for that which is, but it's not necessarily what we dream about in education, is it? So, and in this way, created needs is an imposed desire, you know, for institutions. You should desire these things we come up with. You should desire, I don't know, desire clickers in your classroom, checking software so students don't cheat, make sure they attend classes, track them when they go around on the LMS, and so on and so forth. And it might be needed, given the present landscape, but it might not be what we dream about when we think about better futures. So, instead of that, create digital education designs that are fulfilling hope-punk dreams, designs for that which is desired to be by students, teachers, leaders, institutions, ourselves. Try to create digital designs that are upholding the virtues and purpose of education, that which should be, and if it do not uphold the purpose of education, we should rather not, as Rancher says, and strive for human futures worth having, and that should be what we evaluate on, that which ought to be, how it is supposed to feel, how we are supposed to behave, feel, come alive in education, especially also and importantly digital education. Second to last slide, then I'll stop. And so this is really nice, but how to more concretely do that? And this is really a call to reimagine or imagine digital education otherwise, in other ways, for other people, for other futures, and move away from the projected probable and plausible digital futures, the tame and lame or narrow utopian realism, even when we think we are really utopian and hopeful, and move towards the possible, preposterous, and preferable human digital futures, the wide and wild, but very real and very reasonable utopias. For this, we can try to reach short-term tactical goals, like incremental preposterousness, becoming slowly more and more preposterous in our thinking and practices, but always based on long-term, real utopian visions that we constantly check our steps to, on. Is this bringing us closer to a real utopian vision here? Catalyze these desiderata-based changes to materialize the ideal in the real, really make our practices come from the dreams rather than the needs. Defamiliarize the narrow familiar, like move away from them, not because otherwise we are the deer in the headline and we think this is all we should do, this is a problem we need to fix right now, and familiarize ourselves with the strange and wide and wild, so we slowly feel normal again. Generate new dream patterns that enable us to practice this as digital education based on desire, based on dreams. Liberate imagination from constraints of common sense and realism, because it's not really common sense, it's not really the only realistic ways, and offer the preposterous but real in digital education solutions to real human problems rather than these kind of superficial, lame and tame problems, and real human desires. So, the hope-punk imagination. It looks weird, right? Some more friendly than others, some a bit more disturbing than others, but they're very real. They could be really real. It's within the possibility space, right? And joined together, it is the realization of the hope-punk imagination in the face of anticipatory regimes and lame and tame futures not worth having. And this is hard, It is often much easier to be tame and realistic in education than to be weird and wild and strange and look like this. It is safer, also for your positions probably, it's safer in the present to be colonized by the future than to be fighting back in hope-punk ways and actually work to bring about the ideal in the real, to insist on hoping nonetheless, to insist on being human and kind nonetheless, to insist on believing in utopia's futures for education after the ruin. So designing for the arrival of hope-punk utopias and preferable futures for digital education might be deemed preposterous, starry-eyed, and at the outset kind of brushed off as unrealistic, naive. But it is a way, using utopia's method, hope-punk method, speculative design, whatever you kind of find out there, it is a way to move systems, institutions, practices, and our thinking from tame, lame, and profane futures towards wide, wild, and hope-punk futures, preferable futures, futures worth having. To participate in this rewidening, rewildering, and reimagining of better, perhaps even real utopian futures in digital education. So, we might need to begin in a small way with tactical goals and one-off mini-utopias built around the desires and dreams of a single group, a single faculty, a small institution, whatever you have, to take it step by step towards the preposterous but preferable. We might have to show a real way forward for everyone daring to dream, to show them that it's not hopeless, there is hope, and work for hope-punk digital education futures in these grimdark times. And this of course requires that we become hope-punk ourselves and proclaim a resounding yes we can, so that can be heard in both futures and farms far, far away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now it's time we have a few minutes for questions. Oh yes, we have here one, another here. Yes.
I hope it's about the spider cat. I have questions. Thank you so much for the talk, Ricky. I'm Kelmi Lee from Lancaster University in UK. Thank you so much for the motivational talk. I definitely want to do something. But I just want to hear more about your thought about human condition being, we're not really free in terms of conditions. So this kind of idea that we can do and change collectively, I think there's a bit of danger there that, whose dream that we can serve? Everyone can dream very differently within their human condition that they're living with. So if you can kind of expand a little bit of your thought, especially when it comes to our community that we deal with a lot of people who are more or less advantaged and disadvantaged, and yeah, are we going to dream for them or for whom? So if you can kind of reach that, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, dreaming for others are probably the most, could be the most dangerous thing, right? Regimes, totalitarianism, and so on. So thinking through design philosophy, there's like two things we should be very wary of and don't do. So one thing is come to a community with our own dream. Oh, we have a dream for you. That's the needs imposed desire. They might not have that dream, and suddenly we impose a dream on them. This is what you should dream about. So don't do that. The other thing is the dangers of collective dreams. So there's like Levinas, who's a philosopher, talks about totality and infinity. And so totality is when we think we understand each other. I will never understand any of you. The moment I think I understand, oh, I know what you're saying, oh, I know what you mean, then we are in totality. And then we have lost the ethical dimension of education. So being in unison, having a collective dream that is uniform is also unethical and very dangerous. That means that the way forward here is to have a kind of cacophonic, polyphonic, many-voiced dream where everyone can be part of it, also step outside of it, and where we do not presuppose that we know what other people want or needs or means. So it really requires listening rather than providing. Listening, 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 trying to make something that people hopefully respond badly to, because then, you know, we can adjust and adjust and adjust until we reach something that is feeling less horrible. So what I usually say is, if it does more harm than good, then we should not do it. That would be really unethical. And if we put something in the world, an idea, a dream, or a technology, or a system, a practice, whatever, it should make the world a little less horrible than it already is. That's a better way of phrasing it. So if the world becomes a little less horrible, we are on the right track.
Okay, I think we have another question here. Orna.
Thank you very much. I practically think that in my position, what I heard is everything about the balance for me, and I really appreciate that a lot. In the balance, I also practically think that we should be able to measure things, to scale things, and as you say, feel when we have to step back and not to step forward. And usually we are influenced by many wise solutions of technologies that increase the level of hormones in our brain, and we like and we continue doing that, and then we really are not able to identify inside that we have to stop now or step back. Do you think the rhythm, or let's say the quotas that sometimes introduced, especially in early childhood education, secondary education, so that we gain the rhythm from the farm, and I think also this is one of the main elements that help us to keep with this rhythm of the nature. Do you think this should be done in order to put people into the rhythm before entering the digital age? Do you agree with this?
We have a very big debate in Denmark at the moment where the government wants to ban screens in kindergartens, but also perhaps schools. And another big question is saying how much screen time is too much. And I think that is asking the wrong kind of questions. Technology or not, screens or not. I think we should step back a little bit, but not step back to not do, but step back to think about asking other kinds of questions, having other kinds of evaluation criteria when it comes to measuring whatever we want to measure in education or digital education. So really, again, some of those questions that were in the talk, does this make you feel better? What kind of human do you want to be and become? Because that's a core question of education. And then is this kind of helping you achieve this in certain ways? Do we evaluate our technologies or our student experience on questions like that? What are the values, the core values, educational values of our institutions? And is this what we are evaluating digital education as? I think there's a problematic big divide between how we think about and evaluate digital education and how we think about and evaluate, let's say, education in primary schools in Denmark at least, which is kind of driven by critical pedagogy, Bildung, Dannelse kind of questions. They are kind of not there in digital education because it becomes about the digital skills, digital competencies, but it's also, I would say that's a side effect. It's not a side effect, but it's more important. Like if it's only digital skills, we can learn them anywhere. Why in education? We need to learn them in an educational way, in a way that builds a better future and helps us become the people we want to become. And so the question I pose back is then, okay, what kind of questions do we want to ask when we are introducing technologies? How will we evaluate it? How will we evaluate digital education so it becomes a better future, a more human future, and a future where we feel alive?
have time for one more question. Here? Okay.
Brian.
Now I'm scared when you say, oh,
This will be good. Are you a hope punk, Brian?
well, dystopia is just as important as utopia, I would say.
Yeah, thanks very much for, particularly for putting words and phrases on ideas that have been forming in my mind over the years, and now I know I'm a hope punk. And to some extent I feel I have been working like this for quite a while with sort of radical visions in my head that my colleagues would say are silly, and then my trying to find ways to move things forward. So the idea of these small tactical improvements really resonates with me. However, then I come up against what I believe are brick walls, which basically are policies and regulations and institutions. So I'm wondering, in terms of those practical steps, do you believe that the policy regulations are, even at national level and at institutional level, are they serious impediments to us achieving these visions? Do we need to be rolling those back to allow more experimentation and to allow people, and I thought it was a very good point, this idea of different people have different visions, and we can't be sure of our own visions, but we need to try lots of them. So to some extent I feel it's these policies and regulations that keep us from trying out lots of different things. I just wonder what your view on that is.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and we don't want to get fired also. But again, coming back, yes, of course they need to change as well, but I think that's, that should not stop us getting started in a certain way. They will change along the way as we change education. I think that's how I really look at it. And what I've learned as a teacher and an educational developer in education, both doing projects in primary education and in higher education, is I'm allowed to do much more than I think I am. Then as long as I feed the system what the system needs in hours and evaluation and exams, we can still, well, at least in Denmark, we can still get away with a lot of things as long as we have an explanation for them. So I have very good policy understood. Like I'm speaking 2 languages also. I can speak fluently policy language to explain why we are doing things in a certain way, and put things into the system so it's satisfied. And then I can do really hope punk education. Sometimes a colleague of mine called it guerrilla didactics, under the surface of the system, and slowly change it and make sure that my institution keeps its heart in education. So that's one thing that there's a wonderful terminology in design called creative constraints. So I just see policy as creative constraints. And it allows me to imagine ways of going under, that would be the guerrilla didactics, or going around, that would be the sidestepping through new initiatives, new tactical steps. So yes, of course, the policies need to change, but it shouldn't stop us. And often we have a tendency, because we believe in the system. I still believe in the system. We take the policies, we tend to take the policies too seriously. At least if you think about the Danish school reform in the primary school system in 2013, the teachers, it really destroyed is a strong word. It really did harm to the school system in Denmark, but it also did harm to the school system in Denmark because every teacher was a good teacher in the policy level, really implementing it, taking it seriously, all the learning goal stuff that came, but were less good teachers in going under and besides. And it actually ended by highlighting that the policy needed to change, until the politicians said, well, we didn't mean it as hard as you implemented it. And that is a really crappy answer. They could have started saying that. So it's a bad excuse, but it's also a very, very big learning outcome, thinking about policies. They didn't mean it so hard. As we are trying to really be rigorous researchers here or good teachers here reading the text, and perhaps we shouldn't take it so seriously, but do good stuff instead. Let's see if I get fired now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Regan. And now, please, Mark.
Well, from hope punk to the reality check, I'm here at the difficult job, I guess, to give you a bit of a quick housekeeping for a few items that we need to just let you know about. As Dean Anne Looney said, there are going to be a few challenges in light of what we had with 1,000 odd children in. If I could have the housekeeping slide up, please. It's the wrong slide deck, I think. So there are just a few things. I'm not going to hold you up more than a couple of minutes. Firstly, the program, we did not print the program for environmental reasons. There are QR codes all around with the program that you can access online. For financial reasons, we didn't commit to the app because we weren't quite sure as well what added value, but you can have a PDF that you can download from the website. I'm just waiting for my cues on one or two other things. You will know that from the information, those of you who are presenting that we've sent you, that we're going low tech, so bring your USB stick and plug that into the laptop that's in the machine to mitigate some of the technology challenges we were anticipating after last week's bit of chaos. We have laptops that we've hired in from our IT team that will be available in each of the presentation rooms, and there'll be someone around to help you if you're not a familiar PC user. I'm a Mac user. I'm sure someone who's a PC user will help you install your drive. Those of you, of course, who are talking in the breakout session straight out after the break would want to go and do that 10 minutes a little early, maybe even earlier than that if you wish. I hope you've been watching that we have a visual artist here describing and giving us a capture of the essence of this conference over the course. So do keep a note of that. Still waiting for the housekeeping slide. I should know it all because my role in this conference is really back of shop and Orna is front of shop. But one or two other things that come to mind is this evening's dinner. Those of you, there's a great number of you who have signed up. There may be some who forgot to sign up when you register and you want still a ticket. Go to the registration table and see if there are any tickets available. As at, I think this morning, we were completely sold out. Now, we're very conscious it's quite a time pressure from the end of the conference then to start the dinner. We have quite a special event planned. It'll involve a couple of things before you get down to sit and eat your meal tonight. So taxis are probably the fastest. Buses, I'm personally just going to catch the bus and I can rely upon the bus. The taxi at that time of night might take 10 or 15 minutes before it turns up after you've booked it, even the booking time. So do try to get there as early as you can. We're saying that the event starts at 6:30 and you can roll on up until, say, 7 o'clock. If you come much later than that, you will miss some of what we have planned for you. So if you're running late, don't sweat on it too much, but if you happen to be in town and able to get to the venue, we've got maps out in the foyer area. Still haven't got the housekeeping slide. Okay, these things happen. I'm going to stop on that note. There's probably some things on the housekeeping slide that I'm meant to be cued to, but one thing that just lastly springs to mind before we're going to finish on a short video is we've asked the end speaker in each of the sessions to be the chair. And that's just an efficient way for us to do that, but it also helps with some engagement. So if you're the last speaker in the program, you're chairing the session, please try to keep things on time. We've tried to put transition time. It's always challenging. We're almost 4 minutes over time now, so I'll stop. What I want to do is just finish, thank all the speakers this morning, and I want to leave you with one last thing from I guess in problematizing our conference theme of Yes We Can. Yes We Can was inspired for the theme from the Pointer Sisters, who coined that phrase precisely 50 years ago in this song, If It Works. Song, please.
We're both proud and excited to have with us what I can only describe as the current rage of the contemporary music world, and deservedly so, because I kid you not, they are as beautiful and talented as their latest single is successful. Its title, of course, is Yes We Can, and they are the Pointer Sisters.
So folks, yes, do enjoy and participate. You can head out for your teas and coffees as we hear the rest of that. Maybe the lights could go up, and have a great conference. I look forward to engaging with you all.